You know what is that when you change your story, you can change your life. Now, the first time I heard that, I didn't really know what that meant until I proved that for myself. And there's this famous quote by Henry Ford that says, if you believe you can or if you believe you can't, you're right. And depending on the one that you believe is going to become the story of your life. So my story starts basically about 20 years ago. And there was a lot of wonderful things going on in my life. I mean, like most of us, we have areas of our life that are going really well. And then there's other areas that, could use some improvement, so to speak. And I don't care what it is, it could be relationships, it could be your health, it could be finances. And all of these things were really going quite well for me. I had a house in the country, I had a love in my life, I had a network of friends, I was working at a job I loved that I was quite successful at. But I was going through a very difficult period in my life. I went through a period of really intense anxiety, and that transformed itself into a depression. And I kind of made a pact with myself that I was going to find my way out of this without the use of medication. And I did, but it took a long time. It took really about 10 years. I changed a lot of things in my life. I changed my diet. I started exercising more. I started meditating. I saw doctors and specialists and all these things and therapists. And all of these things really helped me to cope. But they really didn't really make such a big difference. And I got to a point where I figured, I guess I'm just going to have to live with this and just cope with it and fine. And it was about that time that I met this woman by the name of Byron Katie, and I studied with her in New York, Los Angeles, Boston. And she introduced me to this method called the work, which is a way of identifying sort of the structures of the mind, which are the real source of stresses in our lives. And when I started applying this technique, after being in a depression for about a number of years, 10 years almost, I literally popped out of my depression in 4 days. 4 days, and it was all done without medication. Now, subsequent to that, I came across another technique which is called EFT, or Emotional Freedom Techniques, which addresses sort of the mind-body connection where you tap on specific meridian points while you're focusing on a certain issue that you want to improve. So what I did is I've combined these two techniques with a few other things, and I've created this thing called Mind Method, where I teach people these techniques where you can go inside and you can sort of address the internal blocks within the mind, and so that you can relieve yourselves of the real sources of stress, which are just like stress is basically an internal process. And we always think it's out there, that it's somebody or something that stresses us, but really it's inside of us. And once you can address that, you can really free yourself. And I've come to the realization that it's true. The stressful stories that we hold within ourselves, which are nothing but, illusory beliefs, can be addressed, they can be flipped, they can be transformed, and you can get into a state where you can start creating exactly what it is that you want. Because basically everybody wants to create something. And of course, when we try to create something, what inevitably comes up are these blocks that come up. Because if there were no blocks, we'd already have what we wanted. So what are these blocks? And basically they're nothing but beliefs, they're stories. And Mind Method, I think, is, for me, probably the closest thing to what I've discovered as a magic pill that we know doesn't exist, but if it's the closest thing I've found to it. You change your story, and you can change your life.